Welcome to the High Performance Herd podcast. Today, we're remarkably fortunate to have Brett Nelson, the Chief Executive Officer of the Pegs Company. We had an earlier conversation, I think, this week, and was amazed at kind of Brett's journey, what he's done at Pegs, and excited to dive deeper into that today. Brett, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity here.
So I always start with, and we talked about it last time, kind of what was your origin of, man, I want to lead, I want to make a team, build something bigger than myself. What started all that in your head?
Gosh, good question. I always had my father as a role model. So I'm in a third generation family business, and sitting around the dinner table every night with a father who ran a large organization, um, and just watching how he controlled a room and how people worked around him. And, it was always inspiring to me and made me want to carry myself in the same way. I mean, I think we all idolize our fathers to some degree, hopefully, and so I wanted to be like him, and so that I think was the just the smallest nugget, if you will, of planting a seed in my heart to want to become a leader, and then fortunate enough to have some taste of leadership along the way throughout my childhood and high school collegiate career. So yeah, I think that was the initial entry.
Awesome. Well, I have four sons, and so your little story reminded me of a Mark Twain quote, and I never exactly remember the whole quote, but it's something to the effect of, at 16, I thought my dad was the dumbest man I'd ever met. At
Mm.
21, I was amazed at how much he'd learned in the last 5 years. So, it's one of those that sons do look to father. There's a period, I have an 18-year-old right now headed off to college in the fall, and you realize, like, yeah, there's a part of life where it's like, yeah, you just need to go figure it out. And I think he did a little of that, came back, looked at the Pegs. For a moment, tell the audience a little bit about the Pegs Company.
Yeah, so family operation that we got started in the '60s. We started first as a cart service company, like cart when we say carts, shopping cart service company. So cleaning and repairing equipment out in the grocery stores, and being in the trenches of the stores every day, we evolved by finding opportunities to help with product placement, displays, installations, and so over the span of 60 plus years now, we've grown into a mass manufacturer of all hard goods for grocery and retail. So shopping carts, shelving, point of purchase displays, material handling equipment,
Hmm.
e-commerce picking equipment, lots of different types of stuff, while also retaining our service backbone of repairing equipment out in the field.
Um, are you willing to share kind of size, employee, revenue, whatever you're willing to share, just so the audience understands kind of the scope of the business?
Yeah, so we're over 100 million in sales, and run roughly about 550 employees nationwide. We have 8 facilities across the country, 3 main manufacturing plants, and 5 distribution centers.
Awesome. Thanks. Will you share with all of us kind of your rise to CEO? What was the path? How did you find your way? Uh, I heard it the other day, and it's an awesome story. So if you'll kind of share that with the audience, it'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. So, starting a family business, my I would say my father was very tough on me, and I started at a very very young age. In fact, I think instead of daycare, I went to the Pegs company to for work to work, um, and so I literally I think my first days on at the company, I was probably 4 years old, and I remember my first job was to walk the plant floor and pick up all the nuts and bolts that had fallen on the floor. I'd put them in a metal coffee can until the can was too heavy to carry. Then he would dump it out on the table, and I would sit there and sort the nuts and bolts and put them back into inventory. So that was my origin. And then I spent my childhood working at the plant every summer, and literally, quite literally, doing all the jobs that my father couldn't pay anybody else to do. So But it was a real blessing, in hindsight. Like your Mark Twain quote. In hindsight, I hated every moment of it when I was a kid because it was hot, it was hard work, it was dirty business. But it it it, it instilled in me the foundation of our organization and the work that we do, and it allowed me to learn how we do things and to understand the people and the roles that they sit in. And so it just gave me a much better, a clearer picture of our organization as a whole. And so I literally, but when I was in college, I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way do I want to go back and work in the plant some more. So in college, I thought I'd be a tax accountant, something exciting like that, right? But when I did my first day on an internship and I sat in a cubicle, I just realized what an opportunity I had in continuing the family legacy in our organization. And so it was at that moment that I decided that I would go back and work at the Pegs company. From there, my dad said, "Congratulations, you graduated from college. Go back on a service truck and work the graveyard shift in the trenches." So definitely was never handed anything, but was able to prove my worth and by working hard, during doing the hard stuff. And then when I was presented with an opportunity to prove what I had learned and see if I could stand on my own and do something to help the organization in a more impactful way, I took the opportunity. And that was, we had a struggling facility, a struggling division on the East Coast in our Richmond facility. And my father said, "Hey, we have to do something here. We're losing money on this. It's been failing for 5 years. It's time to either shut it down or move it up." And so I took the opportunity. I moved out, relocated out to the East Coast, and dove in. We had 6 employees and about 15,000 square feet of warehouse space. And today it's our third largest manufacturing plant. And
Yeah, awesome.
yeah, so it was a great learning experience. Honestly, it was, you can't pay for that type of education. To work in, to your first chance to prove yourself to have to be a turnaround person, but it was great.
And then eventually CEO.
Yeah, so from there, I just I worked in the Richmond facility for a couple of years, and then was called back to corporate office and worked as from there as a national service manager. Moved into the vice president, and then in 2021, I just made the decision to acquire the company from my father. So bought him out 100% and took over as the president and then CEO.
So talk about that transition. What drove it? What was behind it? What were you thinking at the time?
In terms of taking over from my father,
Yeah.
yeah. So I I had reached a spot in my life where it was like, okay, I could do this. The imposter syndrome that everybody talks about, like I kind of realized I'd had some good successes, and I had realized that I felt like I had the chops. And I had finally got to the place where I could do something, I could make a difference, and I wanted to continue to prove that I could do that. And I realized that, as unless I took this opportunity, if the company went to somebody else and I was just another employee on the payroll, I've lived through that. I've been a number on a spreadsheet where, it's time to cut costs, heads get rolled, and I didn't ever want to be in that. I want to be in control of my destiny and my future. So, you know, coming to the realization that as my father was kind of aging out and looking towards retirement, we had explored options where I'd buy a piece of it here, or maybe they'd sell it off to somebody else, and I'd try to stay on. But at the end of the day, I was like, no, I want this. This is my family legacy. I can do this. I've proven myself, and I know I can take us to new heights. So and that really was the impetus for diving all in and doing the scary part, right? Getting the big debt, leveraging the company to take the buyout.
And having lived through that, and I work with a lot of second, third, fourth generation companies, and these transitions may or may not be easy. What advice would you give now that that's in the rearview mirror to someone else in that position? Like, hey, waiting for father, grandfather. What's the right way to think about it? You lived through it. What advice would you give someone in a similar situation?
Yeah, great question. I couldn't have done it without a great team. And so my advice would be go outside the organization, find a team that specializes in succession planning and generational transition. Because it was hard for us to have um, a business conversation in a father and son relationship, right? And to communicate clearly. And what this transition team did for us was it brought us to a place where we could communicate our wants and desires to a neutral third party. They could come up with a strategy to help us navigate the next steps and line up the people that were required, the bank funding, all the hard things that you don't like. Even from my perspective, I have a sibling, and he's not a part of the business. So, how does that play into this decision to take over this golden goose, right?
Yeah.
So, and I when you're not in that space, you can't think of all these things on your own, and you can't navigate. It's very, very hard to do it on your own. So my recommendation would be go out, find a company that specializes in this, that build a team that you trust that can
Yeah.
help.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I mean, a guide to help you through something that they've been through a bunch of times is always worth having. Um, I've done a lot of coaching with father son, father daughter, brothers and father, sisters and mom. I mean, the family dynamic. And my push always in those conversations, and you alluded to it, is well, what hat are you wearing? And what I mean by that is like, are you having a conversation right now that's father son, or is this business buyer to business seller? And it's worth at times going, yeah, I just put on my son hat. I love you, dad. I want to make sure it goes the right way and make sure that you're taken care of. And then, go back to, but I'm buying a business and you're a business seller. So let's do what's fair, equitable both ways. And, that happens, that dynamic happens so much in family business. And I'm always like, my favorite is I have a father daughter team. And I ask the daughter all the time, would you talk to a CEO at another company the way you just talked to your father?
Hmm.
And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, if this is father daughter conversation, sure. But if this is CEO, CFO, have it professionally, do it the right way, all of those things. Um, so you take over CEO, you go through that transition, have a team to do it. As you arrive at that moment and go, wow, this is mine. I'm now the CEO. What was the business? What'd you find? Where was your headspace? If you can go back to that moment and go, yeah, here's what I did. Oh my God, usually.
Yeah, it definitely was holy. One of those moments where like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Um, and now standing on the precipice of looking forward and saying like all the things that I see as opportunities, now I can drive. I don't have to ask for permission anymore, or I don't have to try to sell my belief. And that was a weird moment of realization. And what I inherited it, and this is not a knock on my father by any means. At the end of his career, as business owners age, their strategy changes for how they operate. Right? I think when you're younger, you take more risks, and you're willing to put in the hard hours and the long time and really grind it out and produce results. But as you get closer to retirement, that shifts, and I think there's a shift towards more protectionism. Like, let's not take risk. Let's take start to take money out of the business, and as you look towards estate planning and retirement and whatnot, and that's all wonderful. But the byproduct of that is the business gets starved, and we had been starved, and I would say probably 10 years from significant investment into the organization. Um, for modernization, for process improvements, and all that. So what I inherited was a place where we had to do a lot of running to catch up. All my peers had well established MRPs and automation and technologies that we honestly we were 15, sometimes 20 years behind the my peer group. And so that was the hard part. It's like, okay, I just took on this debt, I just bought this massive organization, and now I have to spend more money just to catch up with everybody else. So that was tough. And the first couple years, also having to deal with the change management, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
new regime changes everything. So
And as you look back to that moment now and go, hey, here's what I'm most proud of, what would you point to?
good question. I would point to casting a vision and sticking to it no matter what, even when it was hard, even when I had doubters, even when I had people telling me, including my father, that I don't think this is the best direction to go. Uh, just sticking with the vision and believing in what I was investing in, and not quitting early. I think that was the key.
Awesome. And Brett, if you would share kind of your vision then, now, looking forward, and how you describe it to your team, how you think about it. I always look at that and go, hey, it's an important North Star where we had it. People talk about it in many ways, but what was it then now for guys?
Yeah. So then back then, when what I inherited was we were growing by word of mouth, and we're growing at a great clip, but there wasn't a structured vision plan of where we were going. And so what I implemented was this vision of we want to be retail's number one partner. We want them coming to us for everything. We want to be supporting them, and we want to be uh, customer service champions, driven by heart and integrity. And having that framework really kind of shifted our perspective of where we were going. What does it mean to be retail's number one partner? It starts to really shake down all levels of the organization when you cast a vision like that. And so that's the direction we're really heading towards right now.
And Brett, are you retail's number one partner yet, or are you still on that?
We're still on that path. We got a long ways to go, and I don't know if we'll ever get there. There's tons of competition in our space, but I truly believe that we have the opportunity to do something really special in our industry.
So, Brett, I always love these types of vision statements. Lets everyone know here we headed toward it. Nick Saban talks about this at Alabama when he asked the kid, "Hey, what do you want out of your time at Alabama?" What he loved when they would say, "Well, I want to start on Saturday or play on Sunday," because he said from that point forward, I could just turn to him and go, "Well, is what you just did helping you do that?" And so, when you tell everyone, "Hey, we want to be retail's number one partner," you can look at everything that happens today and go, "Did you help us move toward that, or did you move us away from that with, you know, um, a lack of follow through?" We can look at everyone now and go, "Yeah, we're not moving toward it, or we are." Um, but then I always pause for organizations, and I'm curious your response. If you were, what would the company look like, size wise, culture, all of those things?
Yeah, great question. I think we'd probably be over 500 million in sales. We would be, a retailer's first call, their trusted partner. Especially as the retail world is shifting, it's changing dramatically. It has been, but I think even more so now. It seems to be accelerating because of the changes, the pressures coming from e-commerce. Um, but as so long as we're the first call, like we're innovators. That's what we do, and so we create solutions, and we will continue to do that. And how whatever that looks like. We've done huge leaps and bounds in the e-commerce space just in picking equipment. So, what does that look like? I think we're always, we're going to have the best customer service. We're going to be competitive in our pricing, and we're going to provide solutions that are innovative.
Well, you've highlighted some of the components of it, but I look and go, we'd be awesome. We'd be fine financially. The company would be doing remarkable things, and everyone would be proud to work there. And so it starts to what I call create the magnet that brings people toward us. Do
Mhm.
you want to be the number one choice of retail? retailers across the nation. If you don't want that, you want to kind of like come to work and get a paycheck, go somewhere else. If you want to be awesome, come here. So, that's a key component of the whole podcast for me is like, well, I'm harnessing the power of a team. I'm getting them to believe in something. And then I got to get them to take action toward that belief. Um, if we shift to today for you and say, here's how you're spending most of your time, how would you respond?
Yeah, great question. So my goal is to be strictly a visionary, strictly working on strategy and execution. And that's it. I've been on this path of trying to achieve that and get there. And I've done a really good job. I would say I started this year more in that space of just working on the business rather than in the business. But unfortunately, I've had had to make some personnel changes at the executive leadership level that has forced me to kind of step back into the day to day.
Yeah.
But I see it as just a short term setback, and I just want to be working on long term strategy and vision because I think that's where we have the biggest opportunity to make an impact.
And I don't know if you want to talk about what you just referenced, but I think it's key for leaders. So you don't have to give any specific details, but hey, this change happens. When you look and go, hey, I made this change because here's what drove it. Here's why I have to step back in and take the reins for this area. Um, are you willing to share? Well, here's what drove it. Here's what made me look back and go, yeah, I got to make.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a ton of time and effort trying to make sure we had the right person. We had hired it was for a ops person, and we spent a lot of effort making sure we selected the right person. And unfortunately, 6 months in, we started to feel this isn't the right person. And when we couldn't coach to it, it became okay, and then some other things happened that have just made it abundantly clear, like this is not healthy for our organization. This is not what we want on the executive leadership team. Let's make a change.
Yeah,
And so,
awesome. And I hear in that, Brad, I always use the baseball analogy. You have to be really good on the field and you got to be awesome in the clubhouse. And what
yes,
I heard there is like, yeah, kind of not either in this case. And kudos to you 6 months in going, hey, time to make a change because those are hard. Um, and it also creates, well, now I got to go back and do some of that is what I'm hearing from you. And, that's often the case. I challenge leaders all the time to think about, what is an A player? I was surrounded by A players. What would that look like? And I was fascinated in the last year. So I did a lot of research on it that A players are 2 to 4 times better than the average. And if you start to look at that and go, well, in my space, what would the best COO look like? What's the average look like? And is my guy 2 to 4 times or is my lady 2 to 4 times? That's a high bar. And, what you also find is like, yeah, they fit our culture. They perform remarkably well. They're driving results for us. And we often go, well, yeah, they're okay. I go, well, so they're fogging a mirror. And, you instead need, no, they're changing this place. And, those are tough decisions. Kudos for making it. If you shift for a moment and look in that period from the day I take over to today and go, were there moments in that you can recall where you're like, yeah, this is just too much. This is like really heavy. This is terrible.
yeah, absolutely. I've unfortunately had to captain through some difficult times. I mean, we had, the Trump tariffs, grossly impacted our industry. I mean, we struggled, and for us, it was the immediacy of them and the disruption. Because in retail, contracts are long and very hard to change pricing on, and so when you have massive cost swings, like what happens when there's steel tariffs, well, that causes chaos, right? So, and on top of that, having to make big investments, from capital investments as well as just change culture, like that's tough. It is extremely difficult, and to do it all at the same time. There was definitely some times where, I had bankers ask me like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, you're walking a line here. You're not as profitable as we'd like you to be." And I'm like, yeah, but you got to believe in the process. This is where we're going. This is how we're getting there. This is a minor bump in the road. This is a reset. I called it 0 year. This is our reset year. We are resetting right now, and we're going to go through some bumps and some challenges, but we're going to get out on the other side, and we're going to be better positioned for the growth that I believe in. And so that's where we're at today.
Well, you just hit something that I didn't think about in the last podcast, but this is what I've heard. And so I'm curious. The segment you sell to operates on really small margins. Is
Mhm.
that true? Kind of 3 to
Well,
5%.
yes.
And I assume you're better than that, that you're not living in that space, but that's who's buying from you.
Yeah. Don't tell them that, but yes.
Yeah, but that would be my assumption is that, hey, in this retail space, I've heard that that's just it's a tough business because the margins are so tight. And yeah. Um, when you think about leading the team, and you've already shared a little bit about that, as you've taken over, you've moved to something, the business is growing. I've heard you talk about, hey, the culture's improved, we're a different organization. If you think about that, either transition in culture or how you've gotten more from the team, what's at the core of that?
Yeah, we had a major change in management styles from my father to myself. Um, you know, my father has really been he was a growth engine when he was captaining a ship and really helped to drive the company forward. But he was, I think, typically as founders, although he wasn't the founder, he was the de facto like growth leader. You have to be involved at a micro level in just about everything. And so he truly was involved in every aspect of the organization, to a fault, because at some point you grow too large where you can't be the person that everybody has to get answers from. You have to empower the team to make the correct decisions, and to set the culture where they feel free to do that without consequence. And so that was one of our hardest change moments. Was I had a great team. I inherited a great team, but they had been used to not being able to make the right decision. I truly believe in hiring people smarter than me, who are better equipped to do the job that they're supposed to do, and to tell me what I don't see. And um, you know, that was what was going on. They felt like they couldn't explore what options could be, and so that changed management. It took a good year and a half to 2 years before we were there. My ELT team was felt more comfortable and confident in taking a step out. And I've always told them, like, make the decision. If it's the wrong decision, we'll have a conversation about it. We'll learn and we'll move on. But take the shot. You guys are the experts. If I'm the expert in the space I've hired, then we've got a problem. I want you guys to be the experts in this space, in your lane that you're in. So, and that's really, I think, what's helped us to grow at the rate we have, and to really find our wings for a path of big growth in the near future.
Awesome, Brett. You've talked about this vision of retail's number one partner. I'm curious, that work on visioning, mission, core values. How have you guys gone about that? Have you had a partner help with that? Is that something you've done? Have you used the process?
Yeah, great question. So, I tried to do it myself. I spent the first year trying to come up with it, and I just didn't feel like we had found the right answer. And so, I was fortunate enough to recognize my shortcomings, and I hired a Pinnacle guide. If you're familiar with the Pinnacle management system, and the
Yeah,
Pinnacle guide helped come alongside us and just help us to create the structure, and to ask the right questions, and help us to formulate collectively as a team. And I did it with my ELT team, so that we all bought into the same direction. And that's how we arrived at our mission, vision, values, and
awesome.
purpose.
Good. Shout out to your Pinnacle guide. Who is it?
Tane Minnick, she's fantastic. Orange County, can't recommend her enough.
Yeah, awesome. And that work then sets a path. I go, it fuels the magnet again. Here's where we're headed. Here's how we want people back into behave. I can start to pour into that. You can start to go, well, this is where we're heading. This is how we want people back in behave. This is how we can play as part of this culture. Um, from a culture development beyond that, have you seen the fruits of that labor?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have seen my team grow in the most profound ways. Like, and it's actually really inspired. I never thought of myself as a mentor, but now I feel like we're collectively becoming all mentors because we're learning on a outside the organization. We're investing in education and being 1% better every day, and that collective growth, both from an education level, but also like the interplay between us. Like we've come a long way, and now we're mentoring others, and so that culture is percolating down through the organization and really helping us to grow our culture organically. And love what
Yeah,
I'm seeing.
awesome. When you look forward now and go next stages of growth, here's what I'll need to change. Here's what will have to happen with the ELT or next level of leadership. What comes to mind? What's next?
Yeah, so I believe in being to be retail's number one partner. We have to have the best customer service out there. Like we hands down, we need to be quick on responses to our customers and meet their needs. And a lot of my competitors are slow in that space because they're widget makers. They don't it's more about the numbers than about the relationship. So as we look forward here, it's how do I get the best customer service representatives I could possibly have, the best account managers we can have, and train them up to be responsive, to be thoughtful, um, and to really serve the needs of our clients first and above all else. I that's and in that there are several things that I'm doing, with AI automation and other AI tools to help them get faster answers so they could be faster in their responses to our customers.
In that hiring challenge, it sounds like, hey, you've looked at it. Have you used personality assessment, process driven hiring? What are the things that you've looked at to try to improve that area?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've used several different things over the years, and I firmly believe in personality assessments, work style assessments, to find the right team members and the right fit, and to get the most out of them. We're currently experimenting with Aptive Index, which is more of an AI driven personality assessment. But I encourage anybody who's looking to build out a team to use those tools to help them find and select through the pool of applicants the best fit for the team so that you protect the culture that you have or you enhance the culture that you have.
Yeah, yeah. And if you could look forward and go 3 to 5 years from now, we'll be successful if what's the if?
Yeah, so we have some growth targets, of course, as all businesses would. But you know, to me, we would be successful if I truly felt in my heart that we were retail's number one partner. If we were the first call that our partners made, that we were dominating in our space above our competitors. We are not the leader in our space. We have room to grow, and so that's what I'm after is that growth and that being that first call every time.
Awesome. Brett, there's the average entrepreneur always feels like, hey, I'm pushing, I'm fixing, I'm driving harder than everyone is kind of the normal feeling. If you step back from that for a moment and go, hey, I've learned that I can multiply results, get more from my team without working harder or pushing. What's behind it? What's the secret sauce behind the here's how I get more from people?
I think that comes from challenging them. I want them to come up with the answers. I feel like when you're at the top, everybody wants validation from you that the decisions that they're making either track or align. And if they're asking me that I haven't done a good job communicating our mission, vision, values, and strategy and all that stuff aside, like I want them making the best decisions possible without my influence constantly because I truly want to be able to be visionary and that I could step out for 90 days and nothing breaks, or that's the ultimate goal, right? But yeah, so I just empowering the people, I think, has really helped me with that in taking weight off of me, giving them a direction, challenging them with new opportunities and growth paths, and watching them flourish in those opportunities has been our success.
Um, Last question, and then we'll kind of start to wrap. From a um, audience perspective, realizing that business leader, business owner, CEO are listening to the podcast, and if you would offer advice, hey, looking back on my journey, here's what I would tell anyone. What is it?
Yeah, great question. You know, I think there's some biblical passages that talk about the wisdom of counsel and the wisdom of having teams, and I firmly believe in seeking wisdom from a collective of people. Having mentors. Being in CEO groups like Vistage, YPO, convene those types of groups. Uh, men those just they're awesome in developing network and helping your education because nobody steps into this knowing what they're supposed to know. Everybody has to learn as they go, and so having a a a team that you can go to as challenges come up, to help work through problems or opportunities, it's absolutely the best thing, to not walk this path alone.
Yeah, awesome. Um, if listeners want to know more about you, more about Pegs, follow you or the company, where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, thepegscompany.com, that's our website. And we have socials and all the stuff that goes on there. So yeah, look us up and give us a follow.
Awesome. Really appreciate your story today, Brett. Really appreciate your honesty, your candor, wisdom. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's been fun. Thank you. Thank you for including me in this process.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Take care.